have you.
I'm so happy to be back. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, we have a list of questions that we're going over. We talked about the first three. Now we're going to kind of go through 4 through 6. And I really want to give you the floor here because these are the tips that families need to understand. We're talking about kind of life insurance policies, how we wield them, how we use them. Let's start with the first one here in terms of like how much, I guess, life insurance someone needs. Tell us about this, Kimaria.
Yeah, it is different for everybody. So it depends on what your responsibilities are and what your family structure looks like. So it's a great idea to have a conversation with your financial professional. Let them ask you questions that they know are going to help discover how much you're going to need and go from there.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot that comes out in those initial meetings, though, too, because oftentimes, the families are the ones that are like, I'm really not sure, right? And you can't really have a great or sound idea about something when it's not the industry you work in, and there's a lot of nuances to this. So, tell us a bit about what folks can kind of expect out of that initial kind of conversation where they'll get to that answer.
Yeah. So in the conversations we have, it is heavy on getting to know you and what your goals are, what your aspirations are for your family, for yourself, for your business, and then what your responsibilities will be that'll be left behind that you'll need to take care of or your family will need to take care of. A lot of times we think about leaving money behind for our death benefit just to pay for your funeral, but you don't think about your home or your car or any debts that you have. Your family is responsible for all of that.
Yeah, that's where I think a lot of people kind of say, well, let me utilize my job to pay things off so my family doesn't bear that burden upon my death. And I want to just be clear here. We're talking about something, we're all going to experience death at some point. Absolutely. And so this is why I think life insurance is one of those things where, people kind of maybe pigeonhole it because they think, or hey, I don't got it, so I'm gonna let the others deal with it, right? But we often see these GoFundMe accounts pop up to kind of cover funeral costs. I just buried my father, and I'm grateful that we were able to, have access to funds to pay for his services, so we didn't have to do that necessarily. And grateful to those. My sister said, "Look, I don't know what money we have," so she was like, took it upon herself to like, I'm gonna do a GoFundMe. And people did donate to that, and I'm so grateful for that. But ultimately, we really had what we needed, and so I'm grateful for that as well. And those additional funds help to cover other costs, which again, I think sometimes you do not contemplate all of the costs that come with the death. But I love that you say that. So really, it's a wide variety based on really what folks need.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, in terms of how to utilize it, let's talk a little bit about that, because I know some folks wonder, is this something I can use for retirement? I mean, I know a lot of people actually say the greatest thing about a life insurance policy is to use it while you're alive. But tell us a bit about some of the ways that you can use it.
So there are different types of life insurance. Like we talked about last time, the term life insurance is just a death benefit. But there's also permanent insurance that you can utilize that you can take cash out of in order to use while you're alive for whatever reason. And it is tax-free. And so it helps to be able to see the benefits while you're here and not just have to wait for when you pass for your family to reap those benefits.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people get comfortable with what their job offers.
Yes.
And we talked a little bit about this the first time, but it's like, if you change jobs, a lot of those benefits don't carry forward. A lot of times you have to have additional policies that will allow you to keep those policies outside of employment. But, folks, say, well, is this the way for me to retire? Is this what I can use instead of a 401k? How do you answer those questions?
There are a lot of different strategies for permanent insurance to be able to utilize for retirement. So that's also something that you would talk about with your financial professional and finding out which strategy makes the most sense for you and what you want to do. So it makes sense with taxes in the future as well.
Yeah. Well, this for me is, it's really speaking my language, because I've been hearing a lot. And I think now with social media, we're seeing a real uptick in like information that's coming out about things that have worked, strategies that have worked for others, and how people have built generational wealth. And so, people ask, like, is this the way to build generational wealth? I mean, is this the tool that I need to be ensuring that I'm like, investing in throughout my lifetime, so that I can kind of do something that leaves, a legacy behind, and people are not worried about, my finances or things that I've incurred over my lifetime. But again, I think, people only think about that in terms of a death benefit, even though that is true, right? When it comes to a death benefit, if you can give your child or your dependents something, right, throughout, the course of your life, and then your death, that is leaving them something that they can then invest in other things or start something else, right?
Yep, absolutely. Generational wealth is something that we don't necessarily talk about as often as we should when it comes to life insurance, because it's not just when you die how much you leave behind, but also the diversification of your finances, what you're leaving behind for your family. So whether it's term insurance or permanent insurance, it's very important to look at your strategy and to know what you want to use those things for and what you intentionally want to leave behind.
So I have an additional question here. I'm hoping you can answer this, because you're talking about various policies. Can people have more than one?
Absolutely. You can have as many life insurance policies that underwriting will allow, based on your current financial situation. If you can pay for it, you can afford it, and that you have an actual need for it, like what your plans are. So it makes sense, and you're not just kind of getting a bunch of insurance just to do it. Then yeah, you can have multiple policies for sure.
Okay, so that kind of smooths the pot here. We're talking about maybe term life for a direct death benefit,
Yes.
right? And the other one is what?
Permanent life insurance.
Permanent life. Okay, term and permanent, and the difference is really that what term has a expiration date, or
term is for a certain amount of years, and then permanent is for your entire life. As long as you're paying your premiums, then you don't have to worry about not having life insurance.
Oh my goodness. There's so many nuances here, but I think the more we really talk about them outwardly, the more people can benefit from understanding, like, I really probably need to get with a financial professional to help me. I understand where I personally am. And it's one of those things where I've been having conversations with my family, right? And I'm like, look, y'all, I'm learning so many different tips and tricks, ways that these kind of insurance policies can be utilized to do different things in our lives now. But also, when you lose a family member, I think it makes the need for insurance that much greater. And as a financial professional, do you see that kind of as a trend where people are like, man, look, I had to figure out how to get with someone like yourself, because I just experienced this and it wasn't pretty, and it wasn't easy to decipher in terms of how we're going to move forward, right?
Absolutely, because people are left behind with so much money they need to spend in order to take care of all of the expenses. And then you realize in the CD, our families lost a lot of grandma's house because there was no money left behind to cover property taxes or to pay off the mortgage, and people have their own expenses that they have to pay for. Funerals are not cheap at all. And you kind of lose a lot of generational wealth in not having that plan set in place. And myself personally, I lost a lot of people last year, and it would have made a huge difference to have a life insurance policy left behind to cover all of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think loss brings about more understanding. Sometimes you don't even realize, and I guess maybe until you're in that situation, unless you're doing your research, right? You're calling up like funeral homes and saying, like, what is an average cost? Let me get a grasp of this. But I also think too that once you go through it one time should be enough to kind of sound the alarm for you to say, okay, I need to make sure that we do it differently for our next family member, or that we have something as a family that we're investing in that allows for us to be able to cover these kinds of costs. Because when you deal with something that's sudden and you didn't have the time to prepare for it, you come into that reality quickly. But after that, now you're like, okay, I can do something different about this. Well, I just appreciate you coming on, giving us some tips for Finance Friday. I want to make sure folks know how to connect with you if they do need to set up consultation, if they need assistance. It's a lot to navigate if you don't know this kind of area. Please look right there and make sure folks know how to connect with you.
So you can find me at my site at www.kimariahoward.nm.com.
Right on. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.